So these past 2 years have been a little wild, but as the channel's getting a little bigger, and I know people have had a lot of questions about me, I figured, hey, let's do a Q&A. So I asked you all your questions, and I was really thrilled with a lot of them. I honestly feel like, we have such a special community we're building here, and it makes me feel very cool and kind of blessed by this whole thing. So anyway, let's get right into it. So first question. Does your mom know you're gay? What's your background in regards to research, video editing, and or writing? I'm always kind of fascinated when you find a YouTube channel and the first video is kind of a banger. Did you have any previous channels or jobs where you gained your skill set? So in terms of what the channel's become, no. Again, I have a Bachelor of Arts in Film. That's the extent of my college education. I've never really done research, anything on this level. Most of what I've done, I had to, for my film degree, take a film theory course, history of film. You learn a few things, but it's most of the reason you go to film school is to get access to a camera and a bunch of people to make a film with. That's why you pay tuition to go. Afterwards, though, I ended up working weirdly just in a lot of digital spaces, because at the time when I graduated college, there was a big shift happening in the industry where people were moving from more analog stuff to digital stuff. So at the time, certain things like knowing how to use OBS actually got me jobs, because I could set up a Twitch stream, and that was something that people who'd been in the industry for 50 years couldn't do. So, that's mostly how I made my money, and then that launched my career and I got to where I am today. One interesting thing is I did end up, just from working in digital spaces, working with a lot of YouTubers, weirdly enough. I don't know if I should necessarily name names, but I worked at Machinima, so I got to work with some of the old gaming YouTubers. And then I went to work for Fullscreen for a little bit, which was a talent management company that did YouTuber stuff. So most of my career has just been working with YouTubers. But again, these were lifestyle people, vloggers rather. It wasn't educational stuff as much. So yeah, it's weird. I've been around media for my entire professional life, but the thing I'm doing now, other than I know how to set up a camera, I know the basics of lighting, that stuff I know. Audio, on the other hand, I know next to nothing about, because it's very kind of segregated in professional spaces. So anyway, all right. Hope that answers that. With you having a black partner and being formerly an alt-right type, did you ever have to break down the whole, look babe, I was a Nazi and wanted all non-whites, but I'm cool now convo? How does one even breach that conversation? How does someone who's gone through the sort of political journey you've been on answer that question? Genuinely curious. Well, there's an answer I can give, but I figured I'd extend the opportunity to my lovely wife, who decided she would like to answer that one as well. So, babe, you want to come on in?
Okay. Hi. Hello to the mic.
So, I told you pretty early. It was third date, I think.
Yep.
That I told you. We were at my apartment, and you were a little drunk, and I told you. Yeah.
The perfect time.
It was. Let me tell you, that's a good time, guys. That's a good time. But yeah, how did you? Before I get into how I thought about it, how did you feel hearing that from someone?
I was genuinely surprised, because just the conversations we'd have, the candor, the, humor, the communication, to me, you were not a Nazi. You weren't an alt-right person. I had a lot of respect that you felt comfortable telling me that. And then the fact that you actually, I feel like a lot of people aren't really super introspective a lot of the time. And I guess I saw it as wow, there's two different, you right there, right? So to say, it's this person you used to be and the person that I know you to be. So to me, it was just amazing that somebody could go through a journey like that and then literally turn out to be such a empathetic, insightful, and wonderful person that you were. So honestly, I felt very happy that you felt comfortable again to tell me that. Yeah, I was, if anything, I was very impressed.
I love you, honey. Checks in the mail. For me, though, it was very important to me to tell you early on. I wanted to make sure that spending a lot of time around you, and you already knew I had some dark humor, and you already knew I would make like
We both have some dark humor.
kind of
It's okay.
edgy jokes. I wanted to make sure that you understood where a lot of that stuff was coming from, because I think there are people who are just edgy, but they're not necessarily hateful. And even though I think I got there, I wasn't always there, and sometimes I can cross a line. And so it's important for me to be upfront about something like that, because if someone's going to say no, they're going to say it early. And plenty of people did say no to me before you. Well, plenty of people, like 3 people. But still, people did say no to me, like, before you. Yeah, I think you were the first one, actually, to just be like, that's cool. I don't mind in the slightest. And then, look where that wound up. So, yeah. Well, because now I'm curious, like, what's it like for you? Because now that I have this public video out, a lot of people in my life are aware that I used to do that. Because we had an interesting moment where I was talking to her and I was saying she's actually lucky that she isn't white, because when people find out that I used to be, kind of like farther right, nice guy, National Socialist, alt-right kind of guy, and I'm next to her as my wife, people are interested and want to hear the story. But I've said, like, if you were a white woman, I feel like what would then happen is she's now going to get kind of the side eye, and I'm not going to get any sort of, like, cover for it. So it's worked out for me, at the very least, I'll say that. But, like, how does it feel for you with so many people in my life knowing that now?
I mean, I'm not ashamed. I'm not, like, in any sort of, like, negative feelings, because I feel like, again, it's something, to really celebrate somebody being able to educate themselves. And I feel like, if somebody, brings it up to me, or if I had a discussion with somebody about it, like, I don't know, I'm proud of you. So at the end of the day, like, you're the person that I know you to be, and you're a very genuine, awesome, amazing individual. So, it makes no difference to me, because I know who you are.
I love you, baby. Just for the record, I did not pay her to say any of this. She
pays me at McDonald's.
That's okay. True. I do pay you at McDonald's. Yeah. You good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Get out of here. I got more questions to answer. Go. Leave.
Bye.
I know you'd mentioned you had a big political shift. What is the most significant aspect of your political beliefs that is important to you? How do you think that shaped your YouTube career so far? The most important aspect, that's a tough one, because when I had to, like, rebuild sort of my ideology from the ground up, essentially, like, I took a really hard look at it. And in my politics video, I originally had a section where I went through what that was like. But the reason that I cut that was because the point of the politics video was, A, to let leftists know I wasn't a leftist, because after my first video, I had quite a few leftist fans, which is fine. You're welcome here. I just, I didn't want to lie to anyone. And then B, I wanted to show people that some of these farther right people and Trump supporter people, you can get there while having the best of intentions. Like someone who's supporting ICE, for example. They are not necessarily, like, deep down at the core of themselves an evil person. They're just a person. I'm not saying that necessarily in that moment they're a good person and you should treat them, like with kindness or whatever. But what I'm more saying is that, like, normal people can wind up there. And that's something that I think not enough people were talking about, just how easy it is. But in terms of, like, what I then built my ideology around, I mean, again, I would say broadly kind of freedom or liberalism, but that's such a non-answer, because I think most people, if I were to say, like, do you support freedom, 99% of people are going to say yes. But also if I were to say, okay, what about my freedom to go around killing a bunch of people? Well, then people might say no. So it's difficult, because obviously my idea of freedom is not like total freedom. It's freedom within limits. Which I often like kind of use the wiggle word liberty. Oh, you know what? Maybe that's a good answer, actually. Words are not as important as people make them out to be. I don't even know if that's necessarily a political opinion, but something that I have noticed a lot, both in, like, getting myself out of the far right and kind of the online discourse that's popped up, is this idea of, like, if I can associate you with a word that makes you bad. And it's really funny, because you'll see people on the far right be like, oh, you just say something's Nazi and then you freak out about it. But they'll do the same thing with, like, socialism or communism or trans or anything like that. If it's a word that's bad to you and I can associate someone with that word, then that person becomes, like, a bad person. And I think largely it's much more about the ability to discuss ideas. And I think that's why, to a large extent, like, the farther right people who have popped up in my comment section and emailed me to try and set up debates will then bail at the last second because I start speaking to them in a language they're familiar with, and I think it scares them because I don't mind saying things that could come across as racist to someone who wasn't speaking the right way. Like, one of my go-tos for this is, like, if you want to argue women have a place in the workplace, there's a red pill way you can argue that. Because the 80-20 rule, women are being hypergamous and they're sleeping around with too many men. These are the types of women that men should be avoiding, and men should not be marrying these types of women. However, we want to make sure that these women aren't necessarily a drain on society. So we want to make sure that these women are able to support themselves. And therefore, there needs to be a place for women within the workplace so that women who are engaging in these types of behaviors don't have to take the rest of us all down with them. And like, some people are going to hear that framed in that kind of a way, and they're going to just immediately recoil because it's frightening. You know what I mean? Like, it's the terminology I'm using of like women should be baby machines is going to freak some people out. But I'm comfortable arguing like that because for me, if I can get you to support a policy, then I don't necessarily care about what your reasoning behind that policy could be. Yeah, so maybe that's the answer. The thing that's most important to me is policy matters far more than language. How about that? What kind of music do you like? Plus, tell us one really funny story from your life thus far. My music taste is very eclectic. I don't have like a Spotify, and I don't save music. Usually I'll find like a specific song or a specific artist, and I will just listen to them nonstop for a bit, and then I will never listen to them again. Like, Kanye West, his Ye album, which I know everyone hated. I loved that album because slow, calm music like that, like chill hop music, if you're familiar with that, that's something that always like scratches this itch for me deep down. So I listened to like that, and then I listened to kind of the rest of his discography, and then fast forward, because this was like, I don't know, like 8-7 years ago, whenever that album came out. Fast forward to today, I haven't listened to a single song of his in probably like 5-6 years. Tally Hall, I had a phase where I was like obsessed with Tally Hall for a little bit. I stopped listening to them. Jonathan Colton was big for me when I was younger. Like, my music's very like wonky internet music, kind of eclectic, weird stuff. But it's just whatever I happen to hear. So not the most satisfying answer, but trust me, I get this all the time. I've never been to a concert. I've never bought an album. Like, it's just, I have a weird relationship with music. I grew up mostly listening to like church music and musicals and stuff like that. That was a lot of the music I was exposed to as a kid. So I guess I just never developed the tools to like find new music in that way. So I don't know. Oh, and one really funny story. Okay, one funny story. This happened a few years ago. So I was driving my wife to her school because with my career, I don't work like 9 to 5. You know, I work whenever I get a gig. So there's a lot of times when I can give her rides to school. So I was giving her a ride, dropping her off. I let her off a little early because there's like a big line of cars going to the university. So it's like, I let her off so she can walk in and make it to class on time. And I'm behind what looks like a mother and her like young kid, like 12, you know, ish kid. The mother at one point just like turns to the son and is like, come here. And then she just leans forward and like kisses her son on the lips. And I'm just sort of like, ugh, because like I know there are families that do that, but like, I don't know, it's like gross to me. And then the mom like, you know, goes back. We keep driving forward a bit, and then it's right before she's gonna drop the son off, and she like leans the son back in and they kiss, but like for a lot longer this time. And like, you know, it's through the back of a car. I'm seeing shadows, so I don't necessarily like, I don't know if they're using tongue or whatever, but I'm like, this is disgusting. So I have like this look on my face, and then all of a sudden I see the mom break away and start like pointing at her rear view mirror, and they're turning around, and I suddenly realize they're looking at me, and I'm like, well, I don't care, lady. Like, what you're doing is gross, and I'm still gonna look at you like I'm disgusted. So I'm just like, ugh. Door opens, son gets out, is not her 12-year-old son, is very clearly like a college-age woman. And very clearly, the two are just lesbians, and they just thought I was, like, being super homophobic towards them. And I couldn't, like, roll down my window and yell at them or anything, because it was funny. The son was, like, clear said something to mom, like, oh, well, then, you know, if they think we're being gross, let's give them something, because they went back and kissed, like, a lot more passionately. And oh my gosh, to this day, I feel bad. If you ever see this, I'm very sorry. I did not mean it. It was not me being disgusted at you for lesbians. I thought you were incestuous pedophiles, so apologies there. Has any video died on the research, and is there a video on a non-Western topic you've wanted to make? Videos die on the research all the time, but not, I think, in the way you're thinking of. Normally when I sit down to do the research, I have an idea in my head of what I expect the story to be. But what happens every single time I sit down to do research is that almost never becomes the thing I make the video on. So like my Proto-Indo-European video, as much as there were people in my comments under my religion, my Roman paganism series arguing with me about it, I didn't set out to make that video. I just hit like 10,000 subscribers or something, and I said, oh, let's do a special, what do you guys want? And people voted on the differences between the Roman and Greek gods, because that was something I'd encountered even in just my kind of overview of Roman paganism, how Jupiter had syncretized with Zeus, and like they were very distinct deities and whatnot. So in my research for that, I came across George Dumézil and the Proto-Indo-Europeans, and having read him from earlier, I was like, this is interesting, let me read about this as well. And that sent me down the whole rabbit hole that turned into that video. There's an argument you can make that, yeah, I never did end up making that differences between the Greek and Roman gods video, so, maybe that research died on the vine so much. But a lot of times it turns into something else. My Martin Luther video was going to be about the printing press. I was going to make a whole argument about how when a new method of communication gets introduced, how that affects society. Because I thought that the first Bible ever printed in the, a vernacular, German vernacular, was the Gutenberg Bible, which is not true, by the way. That was Latin. And it was Martin Luther wrote the first Bible in vernacular German. So that sent me down the whole thing that ended in the Leipzig debate. That's a lot of times like how my process works. So no video has ever died on the vine in the sense of like, I had a video and there just wasn't a story, so I moved on from it. 90% of the time, it just turns into something else. It's also part of why it takes me so long to make videos. So, question, I'm doing research for my next book. In your professional opinion, how many penises does Cerberus have? 1 or 3? I mean, I assume 1 for the same reason that centaurs don't have like a human penis and a horse penis like side by side. Vosh fanboys sound off in the comments, but yeah, just 1 would be my assumption. How do you decide on which topics to do, and do you ever fear not having the time to cover every topic you want to cover? For the second part of that question, just yes. Just a straight yes across the board on that one. And I don't. There's so many things I want to cover that I just don't have the time to go into, because going from 0, which pretty much any topic I've covered on this channel, with the exception of the moon landing, I've gone from 0 on. It's a lot of work to get to like even kind of a middling place. There's a lot of reading I have to go through, and I'm a very slow reader. In terms of how I decide on what topic I want to do, it's usually up to, I don't decide. Normally it just sort of happens. The one I think I've ever actually decided on was the moon landing, so to speak, because I wanted to do something on conspiracy theories and kind of why, even though I like a lot of conspiracy theories and I like a lot of like looking into the world through that kind of a lens, why I think in the modern era, people have just kind of lost the plot. But like for pretty much every other video on this channel, it's come from the previous video. Like my very first video, kind of debunking Leather Apron by going through his own sources. That is what set me on the path of Nero, because in reading some of those quotes, I ended up reading about Nero, and it was interesting to see, oh, maybe he wasn't kind of the guy I always thought he was, this crazy megalomaniac. That then obviously put me on the Brothers Gracchi, because in reading about Nero, there's a lot about the Brothers Gracchi being populists, seeing how their story got distorted, because we do have multiple accounts of them, so you can read them as heroes or villains depending on which source you pick, if you only pick a single source. And then my History of Roman Paganism series, same thing. I wanted to make a video about how Rome became Christian. And then when I sat down to do it, I realized, I kind of need to lay the foundation of how Roman paganism worked. Because a lot of the argument, if I ever get around to making that series, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about in that series is how paganism functioned in the Hellenic world and how that allowed Christianity to come about, and then what inevitably led to tensions between those two groups. And I think in a number of ways, a lot of people who are watching that series picked up on what it's going to be. It's going to be about the mystery cults and space for worshiping other gods, then other gods claiming to be the one true God, things like that. But it's interesting because even in the Bible, you can see some of this stuff. Anyway, I'm running off on a tangent here, but like that, I think is a lot of what I wanted to. Anyway, I don't pick what topics I focus on. How's that? That's probably the answer to the question. I got a couple questions about this, but how'd I come up with the name for my channel? It's a really stupid joke I came up with when I was like 20. My username used to be a mash together of 2 different anime characters from Death Note, because I was the coolest kid around. Then when I was in college, I was like, time to be an adult. I can't have an anime name as my handle. So I came up with this very dumb idea. It was a joke where I'd call myself Portable Orange. Someone would say, "Aren't all oranges portable?" And I'd respond with, "Well, you have to take it off the tree first." Which I thought at the time was this deep philosophical thing of like oranges are on trees. Oranges grow on trees. Oranges are supposed to grow on trees. But we think of an orange as this like discrete thing that you pick up and you eat. But the orange is a thing that's on the tree, and it grows on the tree, and then you pluck it off the tree and you eat it. But it's just an orange on a tree. Oh, I probably got it from Heidegger. That's probably where I got it from. That's where the channel name came from, like a really stupid, dumb joke that I thought at the time was like deep and philosophical. What do you think is the most underappreciated, underrated dead language? Dead language is tricky because I don't know. I mean, again, something that is very funny is I get a lot of questions like this where people, and I think rightly so, assume from the channel that I must be sort of an expert in a lot of the stuff I talk about, because I think that's common on YouTube, right? Like if someone talks about a topic, they often try and present themselves as like, I'm an expert on this topic. And I don't. I actually try as hard as possible to push back against that for a completely unrelated reason. But, oh, you know what? Irish. It's not quite dead yet, but I would say traditional Irish is very cool. The language structure, it's one of the few, I think, subject, object, verb languages out there, up there with like Japanese or something. There's a lot of cool stuff around like how Irish can make you think about the world. Something I always find really interesting about language is natural things in language very quickly become universal concepts. So that's probably a really bad way of saying that. But like, I always think of this as like, if you watch an anime, you may have seen the idea of like a cute ghost or a cute zombie or something like that, right? My total, I have nothing to back this up. I've not looked into this. Take everything I say with a grain of salt. But my thing for that has always been that the word for scary and the word for cute in Japanese are very close to each other, kawaii and kawaii. So in that language, you have space for something to be cute and scary because the concepts, even though they're not necessarily related, are very close to each other. Whereas you don't necessarily have something like that in English because they're like scary and sexy are probably 2 things you can put together. So like succubi and stuff like that. But again, succubi are much older than the English language, so it'd be difficult to kind of rest it there. Yeah, I don't know. See, this is the other problem. This is what happens with my research a lot is I walk into it with this idea of like, I bet you it's this. And then I look into it, and 9 times out of 10, I'm just completely dead wrong about it. So, what's your most controversial political opinion, and what's your most controversial historical opinion? Historical opinion? Democracy works. That's probably my most controversial historical opinion. Democracy has worked and continues to work to this day, but I'm saving that for another video. Most controversial historical opinion. It might be Nero. I mean, you could argue that my opinion of Nero is rather controversial. Or, I mean, my Proto-Indo-European one, where I just don't buy that, some ancient tribe of warriors just like conquered, the entirety of Eurasia, basically. Skipping China for some reason, but making it through the mountains to India. Political opinion's a bit harder though, because it sort of depends on where you fall on the spectrum. Like, okay, so one thing is I support the death penalty, and the reason I support the death penalty is specifically for people who have life sentences with no possibility of parole. Because for me, when you go to prison, one of the things you do is you make license plates or something, or you do some like very menial labor, and you get paid like quarters or something. You get paid basically nothing. It's very close to slavery. And so I think that basically enslaving someone for life as punishment for a crime is crueler than just killing them instead. So obviously there should be an appeals process. You should be able to stay on death row for a little bit, but I think at the end of the day, you should have the death penalty for certain cases, even though, yes, we do believe in like redemption to a certain extent and rehabilitative justice. But I think if you're gonna have a system that allows for life without the possibility of parole, again, that's just like condemning someone to slavery for an entire lifetime. So just at that point, just kill them. It's kinder, honestly. That's the other problem, though. A lot of my controversial political opinions, when I share them, people usually end up agreeing with it when I explain where I'm coming from. So that's the difficult part of it. And so something that would piss off people that are a bit more on the right. Let me think. I mean, I because it's easy to just be like trans or gay marriage or something like that. But that's easy. Let me think. You should not be able to homeschool your kids. That's probably my most controversial political opinion on the right. I think that it's important to build communities in this day and age more than any other. And I think it's important to have kids go to school. And even if you say, well, I have a system of values that I don't think, the education system is necessarily going to reflect, then leave. Then go to a different country. Like, I'm sorry. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to be in America and take advantage of all the things that our tax dollars go towards, but then you're going to say, but I want to make sure, like, my kid is completely isolated from this one very important aspect of society, I don't think you should be able to. Now, if you have, like, medical issues or something like that, yes. And then one of the difficulties with implementing something like that is what's to stop someone from setting up a private school with zero tuition and letting people just, go to it to homeschool them, essentially. And, I don't know that there's an answer around that necessarily, but anyway. Oh, this one's actually not very high upload, but it's from Ted Kaczynski, so I gotta answer that. Not opening his letter, but I'll open his comment. This is something I've wanted to talk about for a while, so I'll just use this as an excuse. Are you Christian? If not, why? And would you be Catholic? I was raised Catholic, and I still consider myself Catholic. My wife and I attend church regularly. We are planning on baptizing our kids. And my wife was also raised Catholic, one of the rare black Catholics out there. Her grandmother converted, I think. But anyone who's ever been a person of faith will tell you faith is tricky. It's never quite a straight line. So I used to be very, very, very devout, like borderline like heretical for a Catholic, kind of sola scriptura kind of stuff. But then, I moved away from that as I just, hit high school, learned more stuff. And then I took a class in high school where we actually read the Bible cover to cover. With the exception of, things like Numbers 1 and whatever, because that's a good sleep aid. But I remember when I read through it, I actually gained like a new appreciation for the faith. Then later, as, my life started to go down the toilet a bit, I kind of lost my faith. And I've never quite come back. It's difficult for me because it's like I still attend church. Obviously, I've been confirmed. Like, I went through all the sacraments. I still believe in some sort of thing. But I don't know if the thing that I believe in is what most Catholics would identify as, like, the Catholic version of God. But I think just because it's familiar to me, that's the religion that I've stuck with. Would I convert to another religion? Probably not, because of this really dumb Heinlein quote I read when I was, like, 11, and it just screwed my life up forever, which is a cult is any religion you are not born into. I think for the large part why I moved away from it is just, if you're like a believer, you'll understand, like when you walk into church, there's a feeling. And when you're praying, there's a feeling there. And I lost that feeling sometime in college, and it's never come back. Again, like I still go to church, but I don't have that like warm feeling, that feeling of like presence or it's, I don't know. It's difficult to describe, but if you're a person of faith, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I just don't have it anymore. Trust me, there's many times in my life I have wished I could get that feeling back because there is a real comfort in having that feeling. But I don't. And, as much as I still practice and consider myself that, it's not, Again, there's a lot of stuff where, like, I don't want people to feel like I'm misleading them. I consider myself Catholic. I still call myself a Catholic, but there are things about how I live and practice my life that might make people say that I don't deserve to call myself that. So there's that, too. What's your favorite culture you've covered so far? What do you wish to cover? The list of what I wish to cover could very easily be its own 3-hour video. I mean, probably number one, my wife and I honeymooned in Japan. I'd love to cover that culture a bit more. But really, I'd love to cover, like, I don't know, like Aboriginal Australian culture. Just cultures that I feel like I don't know about. Because I think what's fun for me in research is digging into something where I don't necessarily have a preconception. Maybe it might be interesting, as much as this would get me a lot of hate, it'd be really interesting to look at the mythical period of China, because I know a lot of people talk about how, I think it's the Qing dynasty, it shows you what I know, like stretches back like very, very far, but I think historians think that that's fictional. So it'd be interesting to look into that and just see what the sources are, why people are saying that, things like that. So that might be fun. If the Leipzig debate was turned into a movie miniseries, who would you like to see as a director? Aaron Sorkin is a gimme. Zack Snyder, thank you very much. No, in terms of actual directors, I mean, see, the thing is that the type of thing I'd imagine for the Leipzig debate would be almost like a comedy of errors type thing, because that's how I interpreted it. Like, I did really read it as like, I don't know that those men had as much of a disagreement as Eck wanted them to have. And I think that's what Luther was kind of trying to say over and over again. So I'm trying to think of like what directors, oh shoot, what's the, oh my god, Bottle Rocket, Moonrise Kingdom, oh god, he'd be perfect. What's his name? Shoot. Oh man, the hotel one he did. Oh god, Wes Anderson. Yeah, I think Wes Anderson would be the type of thing I'd want to see. But again, I like I like playing loose with it. Like there's the age-old question of should you try and, if you're doing something historical, should you try and make it accurate to the historical period, or should you try and make it true to the historical period? And I think in a way that's going to be, Christopher Nolan's Odyssey isn't out yet, right? Maybe it is. I don't know. If it's out yet, whatever. But I think that's going to be the conversation about Nolan's Odyssey, because from everything I've seen in the trailers, what it feels to me like Christopher Nolan is going for is he wants to recreate the feeling that people would have when they heard the Odyssey for the first time way back when. It's going to be grand. It's going to be over the top. It's not going to make sense. It's not going to be accurate to the period, but it's going to feel epic, and it's going to feel, powerful, and he's going to give them inaccurate costumes because those costumes will invoke a feeling that would have been invoked from hearing the way some of these ancient Greek heroes were described. Now, maybe I'm giving Nolan too much credit there. I don't know. Maybe that it's not going to be like that at all. But I tend to favor that more. Like if someone's like, oh, you're using the wrong type of sword or whatever, I don't care about that as much. So I'd like to see like a Wes Anderson type or someone who'd have fun with it and kind of do it as this like weird rivalry kind of thing. Do you like Steely Dan? Not as much. I prefer Darby a bit more. How does the algorithm being so erratic make you feel as a creator? Every small to medium creator like yourself has one video the site chooses to push out more than the others. Certainly there are ups and downs that come with that, because part of why it took me so long to get through the America video was after my Luther video didn't do as well, which was a video I was very proud of. I kind of like went into a bit of a funk for a little bit. That definitely happens. It's also weird that the politics video is the one that got pushed out. But I just like, it's not that getting into politics scares me. It's just that I don't want to do like a bread tube thing. I don't want to do a thing like, it's boring to me to sit in front of a camera and lecture about here's how I think the world should be. Because it's fine, but I think at the end of the day, like if you're gonna listen to me talk about something, I can construct any argument I want. I can present only the evidence that I want you to see. It's easy for me to deceive you, and that's why I like my companion docs, and that's why I like specifically directing people to like, here's where I got this from, so that I can fight with people about sources. And it's also why it's so important to me to admit when I get something wrong, because I think that's something that I wish there was more of on the internet. I think there's very much an obsession with sort of like being right or whatever. But anyway, sorry, I'm getting off topic. To me, all that it is the algorithm is going to push out content that people watch. How it makes me feel at the end of the day, aside from a little unstable, is really just like it's going to be what it's going to be. It helps me inform like how I can make stuff and move forward. And I try and incorporate things like that. Perfect example. Part of why I didn't do other politics videos, in addition to what I just said, is that like that video was a deeply personal video about like a story I went through. There's no real way to follow that up. Like, I guess I could just, again, sit here and be like, here's how I think we should run the country. But like, there's a billion videos like that, and I don't think it'd be special for me to talk about stuff like that. I think the reason people liked it was because it was a story not a lot of people were talking about, for an experience not a lot of people have had, but is also an experience a lot of people are curious about, because a lot of people seem to have been blindsided by how it happened. And, this kind of answered that to a certain extent. So I didn't feel a desire to recreate it because, I mean, what would it be? Like, here's the follow-up, here's how I feel now. I just don't think it's something people would be interested in as much. And I don't have another experience like that in my life that I can make a video out of, so... yeah. Oh, I like this question a lot, actually, so I'm going to do this one, too. I know for your research you check out the footnotes. My question is, how do you determine when to stop going down the footnote rabbit hole? That's the neat part. You don't. I mean, you just don't. Usually what I try and do is I try and find a work that seems to be referenced a lot in the literature, and then from there, see what it's referencing, go through those references, and then type some of the older works into Google Scholar, because Google Scholar will tell you newer works that have referenced the older works, going through JSTOR, just like looking up a topic. But I mean, there's never an end. I mean, every single video I have done, I have had to change or add something near the end. Like in my America video that just came out, I did the voiceover for the Thomas Paine Common Sense. I knew about Common Sense, but for whatever reason, I just hadn't read it or incorporated it. And then I thought to myself as I was editing, like, oh my gosh, how did I not read Common Sense? Read through it, read the stuff about Europe, and I think, okay, I need to answer this now because I know someone's going to bring up something about that. But it's clear from reading the piece holistically that Paine does not see America as European. It's just like you don't stop. At a certain point, you just have to be done. And I think you feel more and more confident when you start seeing claims that either you disagree with because you know what the underlying source material says, or you've read the work that they're referring to, and so you kind of know what the claim is, or you think to yourself, oh, I read that claim in this book, and then you look at the footnote, you see that's the book they're referencing, and you're kind of like, oh, wow, I know about this a little bit. But there's always blind spots, like with the Proto-Indo-European and me not coming across David Anthony's book. I think a big part of that was that I was looking for mythology specifically, and David Anthony's book is very much like like an overview of the whole thing. Now again, he agrees with me, and it's annoying to me because if I had read his book, I could have put in 1 or 2 sentences and just been able to kind of address that, but I didn't find it. And that's one of the problems of doing your own research, is like I don't have a professor or someone standing over my shoulder telling me you should also look at this and you should also look at that. It's something that I have to find on my own. I like doing it that way, but there are serious drawbacks to it at the same time. So that's the answer. You don't. What does an average day in your life look like? I feel like you should have a super performative morning routine where you listen to niche music while looking at the sunrise. No, actually, I used to do that when I was way more full of myself and thought I had the world figured out at like 22. I think it's like most people, if I have a gig, it's waking up way too early and being upset about it and going to work and doing that stuff. Normally it's, I wake up around like 8:30 if I don't have to work. I'll have my coffee, kind of have breakfast, and then I just sit down and start doing whatever the work is for the day. And then usually I knock that off around 7 or 8. I will say before I sit down to do work, usually I play a game or two of chess. If I go on a losing streak, it can be like an hour or more, which is not the best. And then, I game too much. I'll take a break from editing and I'll like play Frostpunk for a little bit or something. It's just, or whatever the game happens to be, Scarlet Hollow, whatever I'm playing at the time. But yeah, no, I'm a very like normal, dumb person. And we'll round off with a classic. Favorite ancient Roman? Hadrian. I like him a lot. There are certain things about Elagabalus's religious reforms that I really like as well, but the more I look into him, the less interesting I think he becomes. I think in a number of ways, like I'm drawn to the big names, obviously. Honestly, Cicero. You know what? Actually, I take that back. Cicero is such an inscrutable character. He is on whatever side of the issue he needs to be in the moment. But from his letters, just because we have access to them, he's also very clearly like a deep thinker, and not even like a Seneca as much, where like he appears to be thinking, but a lot of his thoughts are fairly shallow. I mean, that's why you get a lot of the later Stoics will sort of say like, yeah, Seneca's a good like intro to Stoicism, because a lot of Stoics didn't like Seneca as much. They found his works kind of trite and surface level, which, to be fair, is how you get people into it, and it's why his works were popular, because they were accessible to people. Anyway, thank you for watching. Donate to Car for Ukraine, please. I understand Ukraine has not been the flashy popular war for a while now, but again, like, people are still dying over there every single day. I really want to figure out how I can do some stuff over in like Lebanon, but that seems to be a whole minefield at the moment right now as well. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff I could do, but then I also feel bad because then if every video I'm like, oh, I'm raising money for this, I'm raising money for that, I do think people get tired from it. So maybe I do like an annual thing. But Car for Ukraine reached back out. I like them a lot. I like the work they do, and I want to support the effort as much as I can. So, yeah, let's see what we can do. But please do donate. Link is in the description. Doing this as a fundraiser. And yeah, thank you all for being a part of the journey for the past 2 years or so. And yeah, we'll see if I can start getting stuff out faster and how that goes. But till next time, take care.